Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into a massive wave of geopolitical news that is creating serious ripples, both abroad and right here at home. We're talking about a historic diplomatic breakthrough, the immediate global economic fallout, some incredibly high-stakes talks at the G7, and how all of this serves as the backdrop for shifting political realities in the United States. It is a packed slate, and we're going to break it all down for you clearly and concisely. Okay, let's look at the rundown for today. 1. The Versailles breakthrough. 2. Economic and regional impacts. 3. The G7 and Ukraine. And finally, 4. U.S. domestic political updates. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The Versailles breakthrough.
So, we're starting with a truly historic moment. President Donald Trump has officially signed a preliminary memorandum of understanding with Iran, and it happened right at the iconic Palace of Versailles in France. Now, the main goal here is pretty straightforward, but it is absolutely massive. It's designed to formally put an end to months of active, intense conflict. We're literally seeing a shift from military engagement to a formal diplomatic framework.
President Trump is calling this signing a, quote, complete success. And based on the administration's take, the core of that success is a very firm pledge from Iran. Essentially, Iran has explicitly committed not to develop nuclear weapons. That commitment right there, that is the absolute cornerstone of this whole diplomatic push, and the primary reason the administration is declaring this a win.
But the actual mechanisms of this agreement go way beyond just that nuclear commitment. It sets up some immediate, on-the-ground changes. First off, it halts the ongoing conflict. Second, and this is huge for global markets, it immediately reopens the Strait of Hormuz. Third, the United States is officially lifting its naval blockade. And fourth, it starts a very specific ticking clock, a 60-day window to negotiate a final comprehensive deal. These four pieces together represent a massive pivot in Middle Eastern geopolitics.
Section 2. Economic and regional impacts. Now, you might be wondering, what does this actually mean for the everyday global economy? Well, it's all about moving goods. By reopening the Strait of Hormuz and lifting the U.S. naval blockade, this agreement restores absolutely vital global shipping lanes. The strait is basically a critical artery for international trade. Ending the blockade means commercial ships can finally get back to normal operations, easing all that pressure on global supply chains that have really been feeling the squeeze lately.
But of course, diplomacy is rarely totally simple. While European leaders have welcomed the framework out of Versailles, they've also been quick to point out that the hard work is really just beginning. There are still major lingering questions about long-term stability in the Middle East. Specifically, the implementation details regarding surrounding nations, most notably Lebanon and Israel, are still under intense discussion. It's like a giant puzzle, and they are still piecing together exactly how to translate this framework into real regional stability.
And we've got a very structured timeline to follow here. This isn't some open-ended process. Day 1 was the historic signing at Versailles. Right now, we're actively in that next 60 days phase, the hard negotiation window. The finish line, that day 60 target, is incredibly ambitious. The goal is to secure a final deal that could bring massive sanctions relief and heavily coordinated reconstruction support. The clock is officially ticking, and the pressure on diplomats right now is immense.
However, that 60-day window comes with some very strict conditions. President Trump issued a direct warning stating that the U.S. will resume action if Iran violates the terms of the memorandum. This really underscores the fragility of this peace, right? Lifting the blockade and pausing the conflict are entirely conditional on sticking to the Versailles framework. So it's a period of cautious diplomacy, backed by a very clear readiness to revert back to previous stances if necessary.
Section 3. The G7 and Ukraine.
Over at the G7 summit in Evian-les-Bains, France, world leaders were doing a major balancing act. Think of it like a dual-track strategy. On side A, you've got the immediate demands of implementing the Iran deal and monitoring that critical 60-day window. But on side B, leaders are actively trying to leverage the diplomatic momentum generated at Versailles to push for peace in Eastern Europe, specifically addressing the ongoing tensions in Ukraine. It's a huge push for comprehensive global stability all at once. Central to that Ukraine strategy were the bilateral discussions held right there at the summit. President Trump met face-to-face with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and its assessment of the talks, he characterized the meeting as, quote, very good. These discussions are absolutely crucial because they set the tone for how the U.S. and its European allies coordinate their approach towards Eastern Europe, all while managing this brand new reality in the Middle East.
So, what are the actual next steps for European peace coming out of this G7? It's really a three-pronged approach. First, President Trump is publicly urging Russia to engage in formal negotiations. Second, European leaders are stepping up, encouraging the hosting of further peace talks on the continent. And third, the big picture strategy is to take that successful momentum from the Middle East diplomacy and apply that exact same pressure and optimism directly to the Ukraine situation. They're going all in to resolve multiple global flashpoints simultaneously.
Finally, Section 4, U.S. Domestic Political Updates.
Now, while all this historic diplomacy is happening abroad, the political reality back home is, well, a bit more complicated. Let's look at the recent election news out of Georgia. The Republican primary runoffs there actually yielded some mixed results for candidates officially backed by President Trump. With the November midterms rapidly approaching, these state-level races are basically a real-time barometer. They're showing us exactly how national influence and endorsements are actually translating into votes at the ballot box.
And the results here perfectly illustrate what we mean by mixed. In the Senate race, Representative Mike Collins, who had the president's endorsement, successfully secured the nomination, meaning he's set to face Senator Jon Ossoff in November. But on the flip side, in the governor's race, the president's pick, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, actually lost the nomination to billionaire Rick Jackson. This split is fascinating. It just proves that state-level dynamics remain incredibly competitive and unpredictable.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we need to ask ourselves as we track this landscape. We've got a 60-day countdown on a fragile conditional peace deal in the Middle East, we've got high-stakes diplomacy happening around Ukraine, and we have a domestic midterm election cycle sprinting toward us with mixed signals from key battlegrounds. How are these deeply intertwined international breakthroughs and domestic election results going to shape the next 2 months? The global and the local are literally colliding in real time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing the facts, keep looking at the data, and we'll catch you next time.